In the comments and on my Discord, I often get asked how to deepen your relationship with the gods. This is such a complicated question, as Charis is built over an entire lifetime, and there is no way for me to know the specifics of anyone's personal relationships with any or all of the Tewe. However, I have noticed some commonalities in how folks new to their tradition speak about and approach the gods, and even folks who are a little further along can fall into these habits without really thinking about them. So, let's talk about deepening your relationship with the gods. Karate. A couple of disclaimers. As I said in my intro, any one person's relationship with the gods is going to be individual, and only you and the god in question know the whole of your goddess. As per usual, I'm going to approach this topic from a Hellenist perspective, but I know that many of my suggestions can be applied broadly across pagan traditions. That said, I don't deign to know the whole of my goddess or how the gods feel about me. The closest that I can come to understanding this is the same as anyone. The feelings that I get after offerings, and the course that my life takes when I ask the gods for help or recognize them for the positive in my life. This video will likely be the first in a series on cultivating a more pagan mindset in a largely monotheistic or secular world, and not every suggestion I make will work for everyone. Take what works and leave the rest. With that in mind, my first suggestion is one I've thought about for a long time. Celebrate your successes with the gods, even if you didn't ask for their help. This isn't quite the same thing as crediting the gods with all of your hard work, as Christians are often wont to do when they call themselves the hands of God or discount their own accomplishments in favor of crediting their God for his divine intervention. Rather, nearly every positive thing that happens in our lives has an element of luck or circumstance to it, which, as many of us know, is the realm in which blessings and the like operate. The gods move through and in everything, from Helios's hand in the rays of the sun on a warm day to Zeus in that freak rainstorm that happened just when that garden you tilled for months was going to wilt from the heat wave. The more you learn about the gods and their domains and aspects, the more that you can see the hand that they might have played in your success. I frequently thank the Mosai and Hermes for brilliant lines or jokes in my scripts, or even for the ideas for important topics in the first place. Athena is in perpetual receipt of thanksgiving for the amazing life that she led me to with my channel and the writing work I've done for years, as well as the insights that she's inspired for me in one of the future tips, my study of philosophy and ethics in Hellenism. Persephone gets thanks for the beautiful blooms outside my altar room window throughout the spring and summer, Demeter for the fruits of my hard-won harvest, Hyades for the sprouts after seeds have sat in the ground after winter, Zeus for the rains and the order of the world around me, Hera for the insights into my marriage that I've received after tough arguments or discussions with my partners. Even though many of these things involve my own hard work, the gods still play a part, and recognizing that helps me appreciate the good they do for me even when I didn't ask. It was said that they brought order to the universe, and even if you're not a mythic literalist, especially if you're not a mythic literalist, cultivating this sort of attitude can help you feel engaged with your faith even outside of the ritual room. Also, don't be afraid to dance, sing, compose poetry, or otherwise celebrate with the gods in a jovial way. A lot of us like rituals to be solemn affairs, akin to a church service, but ancient rites were far from only quote-unquote serious. Festivals were raucous, loud, sometimes drunken affairs, and many gods, such as Dionysos, seem to prefer it that way. That doesn't mean get yourself sloppy before approaching the altar, mind you, but it does mean that if you're safe to do so, express your joy toward the gods in a more physical way if you feel the urge. There's nothing wrong with it. Another way you can deepen your relationship with the gods is to study primary sources very closely if your tradition has access to them. Fortunately, for us in Hellenism, we have a ton to turn to, and as many different translations as you could ask for to help deepen your understanding. The reason for this is a bit different than Christians digging through the Bible for understanding of their gods' wishes, though a slight comparison could be made in that by studying these ancient manuscripts we can learn a lot about how the first cultures made contact with these entities, saw them, and what they learned about them. My shining example here that I return to over and over is the Odyssey. Every time I return to Homer's second epic, I find new insights to appreciate Athena and the ways in which her influence manifests in my life. For example, I reread the whole of the Odyssey while working on the video for Xenia last year, and as I did, I noticed how many of my interests and circumstances reflected her values over the past 2 years. Particularly my interest in weaving and knitting, as well as allyship, clever forms of communication to create the meaning you desire with less savory folks, the drive for justice and fairness, and the ways in which she challenged Odysseus even while helping him to get back to his family to avenge them for the broken Xenia. The way she tests Odysseus when she first encounters him on the shoreline, despite knowing he can't deceive her, yet still admires him for his wit and cunning among the mortals in the attempts which he made, which would have very well deceived another human. The way she deflected the blows of the men in his house for punishment for their broken Xenia, yet he still had to end their lives by the strength of his own blade. She gave him favorable winds, yet he still had to steer his own ship. This ties back to my first point about celebrating your successes with the gods. The more you learn about them, between your own experiences with them and your studies into what others have written about them, the more ways that you'll appreciate the role the gods have played in the lives of the ancients and the heroes, and the roles that they might be playing in your own life. That said, you do need to take care not to let this tread too deeply into superstition. Recognizing the role of the gods in your life doesn't mean every bad thing that happens to you is them, nor does it mean that they get credit for all of the good in your life. As I just said, Athena might have helped with the favorable winds, but Odysseus still had to sail his ship home. She deflected the blows of his enemies, but he still had to fight. On a similar topic of study, diving into philosophy, especially ancient ethical philosophy, can help bring you closer to the gods. The ancients had a number of ideas of what virtue and good were, explored over a millennia of discourse and discussion, but nearly all of them agreed that the gods wanted mortals to exemplify virtue and to live lives walking the path of the good. Aristotle in Nicomachean Ethics stated that often those who live virtuous lives are seemingly rewarded, though contrary to the Christian prosperity gospel, he did note that falling on hard times doesn't necessarily indicate a weakness of character. Examining the ancient schools of thought regarding virtue and attempting to apply what you learn to your own life gives you another avenue to explore your relationship with the gods. I know that as the goddess of wisdom, I've asked Athena in particular many times for help understanding a difficult philosophical concept or building the discipline to integrate virtuous habits and actions into my character and daily life. The major schools of Greek thought when it comes to virtue ethics are Stoicism, Aristotelian ethics, Platonist ethics, ethical hedonism, and Epicureanism, which some consider a form of hedonism, but I separate it out here as Epicureans disagree with hedonists on a number of issues. The skeptics kind of thought all this was hooey, but we're not talking about them right now. Though, it can be useful to read what we have of their writings and think critically about the other schools of thought as we study them. If you all would like me to do videos in the future on any or all of these philosophical schools, let me know down in the comments. I actually wrote a good chunk of a course on Nicomachean ethics for an org I used to be a part of because I was special and decided to dive headfirst into that as my first philosophical reading from ancient Greece. Because this is me we're talking about, and getting in over my head only to figure things out is kinda my MO for life. We're not just talking about me here, though. We're talking about you and your relationship with the gods. As you study philosophy and continue your ritual practice and offerings, you may find, as I did, that insights from the philosophers become easier to digest and integrate into your life as time goes on. Things seem to just click, and it feels like you're living life more in line with the values of the tradition you're a part of. This is one of the beautiful parts of being a pagan, the fact that we can discover these things ourselves and build relationships with the gods, and with ancestors of faith through these writings without feeling the weight of sin on our backs. I find that striving toward virtue feels different than trying to stay out of sin. It is about building, rather than trying to avoid destroying. It's a very different view, in which you begin to feel more in control of yourself and your life as time goes on. Personally, I'm a Stoic because that school of thought feels the closest to my own experiences and values, but I urge you to look into all of the schools of thought yourself and see which one works best for you and resonates with your own value and experiences. Which brings me to suggestion 4. Recognize the role the gods play in positive experiences outside of your own successes. I gave the example of Helios and sunshine on your face during a sunny day earlier, but there are tons of other examples of the gods moving through the world that we can stop and see and appreciate, thereby deepening our closeness to these gods. Have you ever stopped and just noticed something awesome a friend did and paid them a compliment impromptu of nothing? How much closer did you feel in that moment? Has anyone ever done that for you? The ancients saw the gods in everything. From Boreas's chill at the first of winter, to Poseidon depositing shells on the shore, to Hephaestus inspiring the smiths to their best work while Artemis guards the newborn babes in spring. Moments of beauty, peace, luck, or joy that have nothing to do with your efforts but still improve your life don't necessarily require an offering and thanks if you're not in the position to do so. Even just words of praise and thanks will do. Building your chorus in this way, even outside of formal ritual, can help you feel more confident and less afraid when shit hits the fan in your life and you really need to ask the gods for help. How much easier is it to ask a friend for help that you talk with daily and have a strong relationship with, versus one you talk to every few months and aren't really sure how they feel about you? This isn't the only reason to pay compliments and notice positive things, mind you. The gods give when they choose, and their reasoning isn't always clear to us, but building this attitude of appreciation can help you as a pagan feel closer to your tradition as well. You're seeing the world closer to the way the ancients did. And that can create its own form of validation when you enter ritual space and offer later for whatever reason you choose. Which brings me to my 5th tip. Offer often. Pray often. Inflame yourself with prayer. Don't be afraid to ask when you need help, and don't forget to offer in thanks when you can. Even libations of water on a walk if you're in the broom closet can make a huge difference, as you build more confidence in your tradition and strengthen your goddess with the gods. Although I often stress that offering daily shouldn't be a requirement in times of struggle, striving towards something close to that is a worthy goal, and if you're capable of it, can really help integrate your tradition into your daily life, in a way where you feel the movement of the gods through your life and your surroundings. Remember that you're not going to be equally close to every god you worship, and remember that's okay. Remember also that as time goes on, your view of the gods may change, as may the kind of prayers that you make and the things you offer. Right now, I tend to give a lot of devotional offerings and incense as the summer winds down, but in the spring and early summer, a lot of baked goods and first fruits from my garden grace my offering table. Make sure the things you offer are meaningful to you, and that you come to the altar in reverence and joy. Or if you're struggling, with a solemn desire to connect as well as to seek aid. Remember that these are minds far older and larger than ours that still desire this connection in some way, or they wouldn't interact with us in the first place. They're bigger than you, but they still may help you. And there's nothing wrong with asking, so long as you're not asking for them to do something terrible. I stress at the end of every video to remember that we're building relationships with the gods. And although those relationships look rather different than human friendships, that's the closest analogy I have to remind you that building relationships takes time. It's going to feel awkward when you first start out, maybe even toward the middle. It takes effort to keep a relationship of any kind alive, be it a friendship, a partnership, or a relationship with a deity. The important thing is remembering that it is, first and foremost, a relationship, and treating that relationship with the respect and care it deserves. Everything else flows from there. Thank you so much for sticking through that. If you're new here, compliment the subscribe button and notice how kind the like was to you today. Drop down into the comments and let me know what you do to deepen your relationships with the gods. Or just tell me this is all fluffy new age mumbo jumbo and that the ancients strive to be serious in all things all the time, and so should we. Special thanks also to my patrons. You all are some of the most kind and patient people that I've ever had the pleasure to interact with, and many of you encouraged me to write this particular script after conversations I had in patron chat and with Beafeld. You guys push me regularly to better my content while still being really understanding and patient when I get sick or stressed. And without your support, I couldn't afford to do what I do on the channel. May the cycle of reciprocity between us ever remain positive. And remember, we're stronger together.